right? And then get me that disc. If he puts on pause and then comes back, get me that disc, and I will convert that to the right format and then upload it to the system.
Question.
Okay, so I'll get a motion. I'll just have him stop and put it here on the desk.
Right.
And then.
Greg's here.
Hey, listen. Not this week.
It's a reporter. We have a couple Indians here. And you know,
Sammy, we ready? Neil, how you doing? Good to see you. I don't think we're going to have a 16-minute meeting tonight, unfortunately, gentlemen.
That'd be great.
I'll take a half hour. Yeah, I would too. I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled Board of Trustees, Sylvania Township regular meeting on April 17th. Call the roll. Mr. Head. Here. Mr. Mahoney. Here. Mr. Genowine. Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anyone have any comments or corrections for the minutes of our April 3rd meeting?
Oh, they look good to me.
I don't.
Stand approved then? Stand approved.
No, we don't have to do a motion, it's not the stand approved. It's
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
I have none.
I'll just give you an update after the last part of the meeting. You guys want to be kept on that stuff.
Okay. Okay, hearing of the public on agenda items.
Nobody signed in.
All right, moving right along then.
Zoning, got anything? Nothing from zoning.
Okay.
Public Works, Greg has a couple of resolutions.
Good evening. Recommending Resolution 12-053, award the bid for cemetery mowing for 2012. 053.
That's after our bid, right? We did the bidding process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll offer Resolution 12-53, award bid for cemetery mowing to Barron's Lawn Service for $167.
Second?
Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine? Yes.
Thank you. Recommending Resolution 12-054 to accept all bids submitted for the infrastructure materials. And there should be a matrix attached to that as well.
Yeah,
This deals with asphalt, concrete,
tack coat.
Offer resolution 12-054 to accept bids for infrastructure materials.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
You have anything else for roads?
Give us an update on the leaf and stick pickup.
Yes, sir, we completed that today, actually. We might have a few more piles to pick up of leaves, but no big deal. But things went very well.
Had a nice compliment from St. James Association about you too in your group, so great
Good,
work.
thank you. Yeah. Pass it on.
Okay.
I also might add that I received a voicemail from a resident compliment. I mean, how many times do people call up to compliment? You always call up to complain. But I received a voicemail of a resident calling up to compliment the service that they did. Next item is the fire department, their monthly report, and the chief has a couple other things in too.
Good evening. In front of you, you have our monthly report. On page 2 at the bottom, you'll see that we just had a slight increase in our fire calls for the month of March from previous year. We're a little down year to date yet. On page 3, we had an increase of about 108 EMS incidents from total for the year. So we're a little above on that. We also had an increase in the month of March from last year. On page 4, mutual aid incidents. We had the first two, the Brent Lane and the 4939 Hollisvania Road were two injury accidents where we were provided mutual aid for a transport unit because there were no ambulances in service in the county. The first one, Springfield Township, provided us a transport unit for injured victims. And the second one, 4939, on the 16th, Springfield again gave us a transport unit because there were no ambulances available. The other two, the 5301 Main Street and the 5424 Silvertown, one was we received mutual aid from Springfield Township on the one and Toledo Fire Rescue. This was for, we were already at a fire on that date at that time. And then again at 5424 Silvertown, Toledo Rescue ran a call for us because we were still out at that fire. The last two, we actually provided Springfield Township with assistance for the last two, the 6819 Oakfield and the 902 South McCord Road incident. The following page, page 5, we had 15 public safety events. We had 4 apparatus displays, 4 public education events, and 7 station tours. Building project, we're increasing again on our building review plans. We see an upswing again in the amount of activity in the township and the city as far as the building goes, so Mike has been pretty busy with those. We did also participate in the Sylvania Expo in March on that. And Mike did go to a class for college campus safety. Since we have the increase in the Lourdes College now with the dorms, we're trying to educate ourselves on how we can educate the students to survive any type of a dorm fire, any activity that goes on campus. Page 6, our training. We had 56 personnel attend the Lucas County training, and we're back on that again. You'll notice that those numbers don't always pan out. If you multiply the 4 hours times 56, obviously they're not going to go to 212 hours. What we do is we have numerous individuals, about 6 on our department, that actually teach the classes down at Lucas County. And when they're down there, they get the credit for the hours, for the CE hours, but they charge Lucas County for the time, so we don't have to pay overtime for those individuals. So that's why that number never actually pans out, because we do have instructors down there on that. And then the last page was a nice letter from a lady, a young lady, 93-year-old lady, that complimented Rod Staniford and Jim Wolf for the way they helped her out on one of her, when she was in time of need. So, I also have a document that I'd like to give to you for consideration next meeting. It is the Lucas County, thanks John. It is the Lucas County contract for transport unit. If you remember, we have been basically working without a contract since January. The contract expired. We have not had an increase in our funds from Lucas County for housing a life squad in 6 years. Numerous chiefs got together and we proposed a 5% increase this year with a 2% next year and the following year. That 2% to be taken out of the funds that they're receiving now for billing on their transport units for Lucas County. The county commissioners are in the same boat that everybody else is, trying to keep their finances down. So what the county commissioner proposed for this year is to give us a $50,000 lump sum, I guess I'll call it a signing bonus, to sign the contract for this year, and then we're going to start negotiations. This is a one-year contract, start negotiations again for next year to see what the increase is and how the economy is going to change. I still feel that we should tie some of the increase to the cost of them transporting, the fees that they're getting in. I hope to do that. We have a meeting scheduled with the other operation chiefs that house life squads on Monday. We're going to take a look at how EMS is, what the picture looks for us in the future in Lucas County. If we still want to do the things that we're doing now, housing the units at different fire departments and transporting, or have the fire departments totally take over that unit. There's some different points of view out there that we're going to be going over. I'm on that committee to do that. So that starts on Monday. So this $50,000 represents a 7.6% increase for the year. So we did receive the 5% that we wanted. It's not continuous, but at least we got it for 1 year. We feel that's a fair agreement. So I would encourage you to read through the contract. If you have any questions, please get with me or let me know. And I would recommend that you sign the contract.
Thank you, Chief.
We'll put a resolution on for the next meeting.
Great.
Chief, it sounds like you're under the weather.
Yes, sir. I'm fighting bronchitis again and am a little under the weather. I can't hear out of one ear, but I'm here.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Carroll's here instead of Chief Bowman, who has another engagement at this time.
Evening. The rule of the day, I guess, is short. So I just picked out some highlights from comparing this time last year to up to date this year. Basically, our traffic citations are about the same. Property damage accidents are down by 57. Injury accidents are up by 8. Burglaries remain the same as they were last year at this time, 23. Robberies are up by 4, but that's only 7 robberies versus 3. And our thefts are up by 27. In response to those thefts and burglaries that we're concerned about, we have procured a unmarked vehicle that does not look like a police car, like a Fusion or anything like that. We were able to get it through one of the car dealerships at no cost. So we worked that out. And what it is, it's a vehicle, again, off their used car lot. It doesn't look anything like a police car. I thought with urban crime, if it's drifting this way, those people in Toledo, you may as well put light bars on a Taurus, So we have cars that don't look anything like it. And we have some regulations in place on use of that car. It's already been used a couple times, and it's been, pretty good as far as preventing thefts and checking those things out. Our Safety Township is going to start June 18th through 22nd. We already have 71 children signed up for that. And just quickly on one of the cases I thought was interesting, turned out to be a suspect, was at one of the local hospitals being treated for an infection. He decided to leave against doctor's orders, and when he left, he brought with him the IV tubes and everything else. So we sent a police car over to his house, and while there, Officer Tomlinson noticed this little 2-year-old boy pretty badly bruised, and he questioned the mother there, and there was some crazy excuse. Officer Tomlinson on his own brought the child to the hospital. It was determined by a specialist that he, in fact, was abused, and if you saw the pictures, it was pretty bad. The mother has been charged with felony child endangering, as has the boyfriend, and we're in the process of the court system now to try to get Mama to testify against the boyfriend. You really probably think you saved that kid's life if you see the pictures.
Wow.
Got a question.
Sir?
The other day I was watching on Sylvania Avenue, there was some kid on a bicycle, and I didn't know what that incident was all about, but I didn't.
Was he riding a bicycle?
He was riding a bicycle or something over there? You know what I'm talking about?
If it's the same guy, I don't know his name, but if it's the same guy, he's been around for years, I guess, and he follows people and takes pictures, and he's a character.
That's what I thought it was, okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
wanna make sure. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. I guess my suggestion for an unmarked police car being a gray Taurus with no hubcaps, just, make it. Next item is under the administrator, and I have a liquor permit. It's a new liquor permit, it's not transfer, and it's at 7430 West Central. Place will be called Dooley's Pub. I have a letter from the fire department and the police department having no objections to that new permit. Once again, if there's no problem with the trustees on this, we do not have to take any action.
Gonna be a problem?
Okay. Next item I have is a resolution 12-57, which is personnel policies, and I'll let Susan address those.
Good evening. I am looking for adoption of Resolution 1255 to adopt two personnel policies. Both of these you have reviewed back in December, the substance abuse policy and the tobacco policy. Basically, the change to the tobacco-free workplace policy is that we are going to make it smoke-free or tobacco-free, not only within the buildings, but township-wide, all the premises. We have talked about this again with all the unions, and they're in agreement with it. We will no longer hire or offer employment to smokers, so that is one of the things that we will screen when we are interviewing, and that will be part of their pre-employment physical to check to make sure that they are not a smoker. So that's the main change for the tobacco policy. That will go into effect, if adopted tonight, it will go into effect 6 months from now. We felt that it was important to allow the employees 6 months to prepare for that. The insurance plan that we offer employees does cover classes, patches, gum, whatever at no cost. So there's a lot of tools out there that they can use to try to overcome this. The substance abuse policy, basically the change there is we needed to update it because we are no longer under the Bureau of Workers' Comp's program. We hit our 5-year limit on that a year or so ago, so we're on our own. So we modified the plan to reflect that, and the biggest change probably is we did expand our panel of drugs that we do test. We'll still do random testing, still do post-accident, still do suspicion. So we did increase the panel, but we also are including something in there that if someone is under suspicion, we can test for whatever drug we think that they might be under. So in addition to the panel, we can add a drug if we need to. So those are the basic changes.
Question?
Yes.
You said resolution 12-55, and it's 12-57? Is which one correct?
1257, yes, I'm sorry.
I want to make sure I have the right. Anybody want to offer?
I'll offer resolution 12-057, adoption of the personnel policies.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the Township Investment Committee. I know the trustees want to talk about this. I also have some guidelines that I'd like to pass out to the trustees on how we make investments. I want to make sure that it's open to any qualified institution, that nobody is excluded from bidding on. So here's a couple of copies of how we're going to handle it.
Yep.
And I know the trustees want to discuss about this a little bit too, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I just, in reviewing some of the board appointments and reviewing the process, I just wanted to more formalize this and to
make sure that any and all qualified bidders have an opportunity. I think it's important to have a transparent policy and to have records of it, and if we're ever questioned on it, it's, we've got a record of it. And so I'm glad that we've made these changes, and I think the investment committee's doing great. I mean, there's not much investment income coming from the insurance industry. I know that we used to make our bread and butter off the investments, and that has pretty much dried up, so you have to now make a profit on your core business. So I know that transfers over to everything else, and I know that, Jim, you go out there and, you do a good job. I just want a little bit, I think the record keeping would be a little bit better.
Basically, that's what you're seeing is what I do anyway.
Okay.
So
But not formalized.
It's on paper, though, let's see.
It's on paper.
Yeah.
And as you said, investments are so small now, I mean, the interest is so small that any dollar you can make is a dollar.
Yeah.
So let's try to get the most we can.
When we first used to do those reports, and that for the investment committee, I spent 5 to 10 minutes extolling how well we were doing. This is probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and took substantial credit for that, but now I used to have Mr. Beck do the reports. Our returns are puny, but they're safe. And that's, that's one of the things that I think is important to the township, that we have criteria as to who can bid on it, making sure that they're fully secured,
Every penny we have is insured, and every penny we have is invested, earning what it can. Okay, so, I mean, even my operating account pays interest now. Little that it is, but.
Yeah, I see that 56 cents added to my checking account every month.
It's amazing.
I don't really factor that in, but it is there.
It's amazing.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of bring this to formalize the process. All right. The other item, when we do make board appointments, the investment committee, I know we've got a member of the board on it each time. Do we want to make that an annual appointment? Do we want to make that?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm on it now, and I don't know if you guys have been on it in the past, but I think it's worthy of, everybody getting a feel of what it is all about. So I like that side of it, the investing side and the numbers, but when is my term is up? Or
The investment committee, unlike other appointments, has no time period or set. I mean, it can change anytime, and once you're on it, unless it changes, you're on it. We can change that resolution, make it an annual appointment next year, or change it now, however you want to do it.
It doesn't, either one of you guys want to be on it, I can step down, that's fine with me, it doesn't matter.
I think maybe moving forward, at the end of the year, we'll change the guard and make it, when we do our list of board appointments, and since you kind of came into an abbreviated year last year, why don't you finish this year out and then start in next January, and we'll add that to the list of...
We'll change the resolution so it is on an annual appointment, instead of just open-ended.
Sounds good.
I think it's great, thank you.
Okay. Next item is discussion on the future site of Fire Station 1. As the board knows, we've been working on various sites over last 8-9 months, and we're still working on it, and I'll let you comment on it, but, we'd like to keep moving on it, and look for some guidance and advice on our next steps.
Well, I know the clock is ticking, and we have to, and help me here if I'm wrong here, but we have to have the monies appropriated by the end of this year, if not already spent.
Close to the end of this year. Yeah, we have to move on it, otherwise we will have to pay the money back, which means then when we do find a place for Fire Station 1, we have to reborrow the money, which is a very costly thing to do, is to borrow money again.
Yes.
So ideally, I mean, we have some time, but we got to keep moving on it to make a decision and start spending the money for purchasing property and construction of that.
Ideally, I would like to get this board to come to a decision by mid-June. Do you think that's reasonable? So 60 days from now, that we would have a site picked, and then we can at least start moving on it. I know there's a few sites that we're looking at right now.
We're always looking at this.
I know we're always looking, but they are getting less and less.
Yes.
So,
I think that's a good time, by the time we get through due diligence and all the things that may encounter issues, easement issues, title issues. I think that's, mid-June's probably what do you think, John? That's a...
I think that's a goal we can set,
Okay.
and let's hope we can accomplish it.
is it possible to add this to the executive session without violation of?
No, it's possible.
Yeah, if we have property that we're looking at, purchase of property, it comes under executive session.
You mean tonight?
Yeah.
We can change the resolution.
There's no resolution. All you have to do is when he makes a motion, go into executive session, say we're going to discuss properties.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would like to make sure that we're all on the same page here without jeopardizing the negotiations with any landowners
Right,
at this time.
right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, next item is the fiscal officer, and I'll turn it over to Dave.
With our month-end, there it is, our month-end analysis. Things are still really working on taking shape. As you can see, the standard percentage for expenditures would be 25%, and so we're at that, essentially in all of our funds. The only one that is just a little bit higher is the general fund, and that's really due to some one-time or maybe two-time expenditures that we've made in this month. They're listed there, workman's comp, some election expenses, general health district, and so that's pushed that up slightly. But so I think at this point, we're about where we expect to be. We still have once we get into the summer months and that, June, July, we start seeing things taking shape, but I think right now we're in pretty good shape financially. Looks good. Again, I want to thank all the department heads and John and Susan for kind of leading the charge. I think we're staying within the budget, and we all keep looking at that black cloud hanging over 2013, and so it's important to keep our eye on it.
All right, just to let you know, we're going to be starting working on 2013 soon, and probably get the department heads together and the trustees, and we're going to have to cut some more.
Yeah, I just got some reports from the state, being Township Association, that with the summer sessions we're going to discuss, because we're going to lose 50% of our, fund of our local government funds. And then he's looking for more cuts, plus they're looking at more ways to raise money from the townships and everything from the state and get all of our money down there. So it's going to be a big cut, guys.
So we're starting now.
Yes, I mean, I think it's important to, if we're going to be making cuts, that the residents understand that there's cuts coming and where they're coming, and so we don't catch anyone by surprise. And, if people have concerns, they can come here and voice them or call any one of us. But
correct.
We all know it's coming. Then we just have one resolution tonight, and that's Resolution 12-055, the township appropriation from one unencumbered balance, and it's really basically the fiscal officer bond was approved, I think, at the last meeting. And then we also have a land utilization account in the police department was missed, and we have to pay the county our designated portion. And so the bond is $1,000, which is required by law for the fiscal officer, and then there's a $13,000 regarding the land reutilization fund.
Okay. I'll offer Resolution 12-55. Township appropriation from unencumbered balance for the fiscal officer bond and land utilization account.
Second. Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine? Yes. John Barnes, speaking on non-agenda items. Please come up and state your name and address.
Good evening, I'm John Barnes. I live at 4115 Boynton Drive here in the greater Savannah area. My non-agenda item is I'm wondering what the trustees are doing about the fire EMS transport. That was promised that we'd possibly bring that back into the fire service, have them have a transport unit. Sylvania Township is the only entity in Lucas County that does not have a fire-based transport service. And I am a firefighter, but not here in Sylvania Township. So I do have a background in this and speaking from this. The thing I'm looking at, and I said on different committees to go to, the private ambulance services in the area are decreasing the amount of resources they have available. Due to the fire departments having Toledo Fire being one, that has increased the amount of fire-based transports. And just hearing the chief speak tonight, that we had relying on Springfield Township and Toledo Fire to come in and do those transports for them. I think that's a basic service that us, as the citizens of Sylvania Township and Sylvania City, deserve. So I really would like to see the transport issue be brought back up and see a transport when it comes down my street to take me to the hospital, my family member, or somebody else, say Sylvania Township Fire on it. I think that's an obligation that you need to look at and get back to us as citizens. There is the billing process that was done before for paying for that service for the transport unit. Lucas County EMS is doing that, and I had to use that service last year. And I did receive a bill from Lucas County, and I did pay that bill. I don't think the citizens will have a problem paying for that service and getting it in a timely fashion. But when you have to wait from the time that the firefighters call for that transport unit to the county, and then they say there's none available, and then they have to call a mutual aid agency to bring a transport in, and that delays the time of service. There's a thing called a golden hour, and if it's that critical that somebody needs to get to the hospital in that golden hour, you may be exceeding that time waiting for other entities to get here to transport us citizens to the hospitals and get the treatment that we need in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
So I'd like to kind of have an idea, if you could, say where we stand with getting the fire transport back.
Well, we continue to work with our fire chief on developing a plan, but our residents spoke pretty loudly a few years ago when we attempted to do this, and it didn't go very well. And so before we take action again, we want to make sure we have all of our T's crossed and I's dotted, and you know, that takes time, and the chief has been very diligent. We've asked him to revise his plan a few times, and he does a great job. And I actually have a meeting scheduled with him this week or next week to discuss some of the things that he's changed on his plan. But I don't think the residents of Sylvania Township, I know the dependency is increasing, like you said, with the private ambulances kind of going more towards the scheduled transports than the emergency ones. But the last time we tried it, I know the overtime and things really hurt the township's budget, and that's something as a trustee that we're looking at and trying to make sure or guarantee that it won't happen again. And I'm confident that the chief can work up something to deliver the service and keep his department well within budget.
I understand that as well, you know, being from another entity, but I think we're missing the boat here of not providing that service for our citizens. And if the citizens really knew that the time frame that's taking out there for getting a private ambulance, 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes.
Well, I believe that's just in the transport, not in the, you know, if somebody has the advanced life support,
Right.
they're getting transported, so it might be a broken leg or something that they're waiting 20 minutes. It's not some guy who's having a heart attack.
Correct.
But we are heading in that direction, but before we take a step, I think we want to make sure that we don't have a repeat of what happened last time. And sometimes that takes time to get it right, and I think that's what the focus of this board is, to make sure we get it right this time.
I agree, but at the same time, I think the facts will support putting them back in service center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Al Hayes.
Good evening, Al Hayes, 7040 Whitetail Court. Just a couple quick things. On the investment policy, do you have a regular policy that says how far it's weighted either way, how far you can go, or is it just all 100% bonds, or you have a written policy?
That's kind of what my intention was to bring it up, is to get everything more in a formalized plan and to make sure that we're reaching out to the right people, even, to make sure that we're getting enough bids to keep everyone competitive. Jim, do we have a certain percentage that we put in bonds, or?
No,
certainly if it was up to me, gold under my mattress, but.
We just currently got into some bonds. Up until that time, it was all CDs. Now, we're restricted by ORCB as to what we can invest in, and government bonds are about the only thing that we can get into, other than CDs.
Okay, that's what I wondered, what the law was on that. Because I sat on a couple boards, and one of them, a very conservative nursing home board, and they make 4 or 5% on their money. How much money are you talking about in a CD?
I believe we have 10 million in investments?
Well, we have more than that in investments. Jim, can you give some greater detail?
Yeah, we have $2 million invested in government bonds, and we have approximately, as of today, about $24.5 million invested in CDs, or interest-bearing accounts, of which I have about 17 or 18 million in certificates of deposit through Cedars, which is a lot better interest rate than you can get by going out to the big banks and saying, okay, they just don't want to pay. The big banks don't want to pay anything.
And I understand it, but have you tried that?
What's that?
Went to the big banks, because things are changing.
I go to the big banks all the time.
No, I'm not questioning your ability, I'm just saying, hey, I think that kind of money should demand a little bit more interest in this market.
We are trying to formulate more of a structured plan, and maybe it's something we get on our website, is how much money we've got out there and where we're investing it. And
the problem with the big banks is they don't need the money. They can borrow money from the feds at 0% interest.
Well, the taxpayers gave them a bunch of money, that's why. We understand that. Anyway, moving right along, thank you, that answered my question. The next thing I have is on TARDA. I thought you were going to bring something up on TARDA, you said?
I am, but he went to the other part, we'll go to that when he's done. Sorry. That's all right.
Well, I guess we're still going to put it on the ballot, is that correct? Okay.
It is our intention.
And we're going to just put it on the ballot as whether the township residents want TARDA, public transportation, or not. No other program, just whether the taxpayer wants TARDA or wants public transportation. The masses. Let the masses vote on that. We're not going to encumber that by trying to do taxes or put together our own transportation service. I don't feel that you're in that business to do that. That's just my point. I definitely don't want to see a sales tax on it. I've heard that going around. The county wants to put a sales tax on it, I'm sure, but we don't need their help with that.
as we dig further into this, we realize there's more and more hurdles to setting up our own service. And that was something that this board had kind of promised the public, is to have a replacement if we did put it on the ballot. One thing that is very important for me is to be very clear to the general public as to what will happen. And at this point in time, I don't think Sylvania Township could provide transportation services. So if we do put it on the ballot, it would be an all or nothing type of situation. Now,
Let me address it.
as we're sitting here, this is the first time any of us have addressed it in 6 months. So Kevin, if you got something to add, please.
Yes, as I've gone to 90% of the charter meetings since I've taken office now, and this became a thing, and they're blaming me for bringing all this up. Problem is that Perrysburg started this with Randy Gardner because they wanted out. Randy Gardner brought the law, and when the law changed, if we didn't vote on it in the primary, either way, we're going to be paying for the next 2 years. We're going to be paying to the end of 2013. So that's number one. Number two, if we put it on the ballot and we vote out, we're done. We cannot put a transportation tax on, we have to add a general fund tax to fund our own system. Or B, we have to get into another regional transit system with Perrysburg or somebody on the outlying areas here to form regional transportation to put on just a transportation tax. Because Mr. Mahoney was looking into the fact that to separate from the city, which if we put on a general tax, property tax, it's gotta go to the city. If we do a transportation tax, like I told them at the last meeting, that would be separation, where Sylvania Township alone and Perrysburg alone would do their own transport system, and we would share those revenues and pay the services out of that tax specifically. To go into where we are at the last meeting, I basically at the last meeting told them to fire somebody at TARDA, and they didn't get the hint, so the next meeting I am going to tell them specifically to fire Jim Gee. Have either one of you two received any information at all from Mr. Gee about going to a sales tax and how much better it's going to be? No. He's lied to me 3 times in a row, and I'll say that publicly. He has lied to me that he's going to get us information about how it would be better and how it's much better service. And when I calculated it out, I said, you take the average poor person who makes $1,000 a month and they spend $400 on taxable items, yes, it's going to cost them $2 more a month to pay for their own bus transportation on a sales tax. And for the general people and population, it's going to cost us about $150 more a year for the sales tax compared to the property tax. So we would be saving money off the property tax, and it's off the burden of people like me, who I specifically told them I have $4,000 in property taxes with all my properties I paid at TARDA.
That's correct.
With all the real estate I own.
Correct.
And I try to tell them, yeah, it's going to cost me a lot less if we go to a sales tax. But you have not showed me a program, or neither one of my constituents here, who specifically said they want to know how you're going to spend the money, what you're doing. And at the last meeting, Mr. G specifically stated, we're ordering 10 more buses because we get it for free. I said, yeah, and the guy dropped off a 747 at my house too and said, here, it's yours. I got to get a pilot, I got to get fuel, and I got to get passengers on it. He doesn't get the hint. So I mean, if this board, they've been in executive session twice to discuss getting rid of them, and they've done nothing. So next time I'm calling for him to be fired, and if they don't, I'm going to call every one of the jurisdictions to fire the board and get a board in there that's going to do some action.
I commend you for doing that, because I think we're getting a raw deal.
We are.
I know you're kind of stirring the pot there, but I'm stirring the pot too. I think we're getting a raw deal.
We are.
But anyway, you answered my question.
I've had enough residents reach out and say they're unhappy with the current system, whether it's the ineffectiveness or the, lack of concern about their process and their services. They just don't seem to care.
They don't.
And so it's a continuous thing. I mean, I would say, a dozen times a week, somebody comes up and wants to know about this subject. So I'm, convinced that we do need to put it on the ballot. I am also convinced that, this board would have a difficult, and this township, as we're cutting down and cutting services and cutting personnel and everything, that we'd be kind of foolish to enter into a public transportation system of our own. So I do think the vote is going to be whether this community wants to support public transportation or not, and let the voters decide that.
Okay, I have one other item. I don't want to run over my time and get thrown out. In comment to Mr. Barnes, I agree with Mr. Barnes, okay? I think we should have it. But the problem we've had, in the information I've seen, it hasn't been very cost-effective. Now, how do you put a cost on someone's life? I understand that. But my point is that we did that before. We went into overtime. We had all kinds of issues with a lot of different stuff, and we laid firemen off. I don't want to see us jeopardize that for somebody that has a broken leg that has to wait for the ambulance. I don't know why we can't go to a service, the fire department can't go to one of these ambulance services and send an ambulance on every squad run. Reed's made a fortune on it. They run an ambulance on every squad call, and I think Mr. Barnes will remember when they did that. There was always an ambulance with that squad, whether they transported or not. So there's other viable ways that I think we can do that. Yes, I would like to have them, for every incident. But if as long as we have the life support and that, I don't want to jeopardize the rest of the department for that item and have it go awry. And I don't think any of the other departments, from what I've heard, that has been a money-making deal. And we found out it wasn't a money-making deal either, as far as billing it.
That's why we're going slow and making sure we get this right. I would, at this time, like to send kudos out to the fire department from a letter we received from Mr. Fralick that says if you do have a heart attack in the township, you have a 17% greater chance of survival with our department responding?
Our department has a 56% survivability rate from sudden cardiac death in Lucas County. That is the highest squad in Lucas County. And the reason we have that is because we have paramedics on all our first out ALS engines who perform their paramedic duties on the scene, and we have the backup of the life squad coming to make that transportation. So we do have the highest save rate in Lucas County, and that letter was actually part of a letter that we received from Brent Parquette, who's the Director of Education at Lucas County. And just to, not to get into your subject, Mr. Hayes, but we do have it currently, whenever we have a BLS run, we currently have a Code 2 ambulance coming at the same time of our BLS runs. We already have that. And in many cases, we're waiting 20, 40, and 45 minutes for that unit to get there still.
Due to their unavailability.
For a BLS run, due to the unavailability, yeah.
My point is, and I'm not gonna go back and forth with you, I just seen it wasn't, I don't disagree with the operation of it at all. I think it's great. I just think it can be a costly thing with the way times are that could put the whole thing in jeopardy if it had a big cost overrun. So that's my only point. I am not against it at all, but I am against it if it becomes a costly item. As you talked about 2013, you know, things aren't getting better, they seem to be getting worse for us as taxpayers in the township. I'm just a taxpayer giving my opinion, that's all. Thank you.
We're looking at all those things, and we're trying to move slow so we get it right.
You guys make the big money, so I just wanted to make sure you were doing that.
I'd like to comment a little bit on that. It's, and the chief can back it up, that we have been working on this for months. We want to learn from our mistakes of the past and learn from the things that were good in the past. And I go over with the chief, and he and I go back and forth about overtime, cost, number of runs, and before I make a recommendation to the trustees, I'm going to make sure all the figures, I agree with, chief agrees with them, and that we have a viable plan, not to make money, but not to lose money, and service the citizens of the township. So we are working on it, and I keep the township trustees informed every once in a while. We're still moving forward on it, and like Mr. Gentleman said, is we don't want to rush into it. We want to make sure all our T's and I's are crossed, and we have the proper data, and if that shows that it's a feasible operation, we'll recommend it.
Sounds good. Come on up and speak.
Penny Levine, 3753 Her Road. No criticism, but just a correction. Worked on that, there's about 6 of us that worked on the fire levy, the 1.5, and then agreeably the 1.25. It wasn't a point of overtime, it was a point of discontention, let's put it that way, with the fire department and 2 trustees that had a problem with the fire department. There was no extras as far as manpower goes that specifically did nothing but drive around on ALS or BLS calls. Those scheduled firefighters that were scheduled not only to fight fires, also drove that transport unit when the transport unit was called. Okay? There was no extra people that created overtime. The billing on that also brought money in. Those that did not have insurance agreed to pay a certain amount monthly. Those that had insurance was billed for that as to what their insurance paid back to the fire department. Was there a deficit? There was about a $140,000 deficit, but the reason for the transport unit was never to be a moneymaker. It was a service to the township and to the city of Sylvania's residents and taxpayers, and anyone visiting our area. Even those outside the area also made monthly payments. There was 3 ways to figure the expense when you looked at it when the study was done in 06 and 07. You could look at it 3 ways. One column looked like it lost money gazillions. The other column was right on target. The third column was a maybe if. Unfortunately, the 2 decided to go with the gazillion column to try and prove their point. I just threw all that stuff in a box. If you would like to look at all those studies from 06, 07, I'll be glad to drop them off. You'll see what happened, so you know what happened, so we don't repeat it again. But It was a service, never to make money. Was it a good service? You betcha. Especially when an ALS call today runs $950 that is billed out from ProMedica and all the other ambulance services. A BLS runs about $750, and they make sure they get their money. Okay? And if you don't pay, after 3 months, you're going to collections. So, they're a business. Okay? We were a service for our people. And the numbers will show that as, in the actuality, I think you need to talk to the chief who was here and dealing with that at that time and knows what I'm talking about on the study. Also, too, Kevin, I know you talk about Mr. Gee. Yes, is there problems with communication and non-cooperation, that kind of thing, lack of information, but yes, you're right. There's been problems with Mr. Gee. I think just as any other board and any head of office, if that board is not making sure that that head person is doing what they need to do, then that board needs to go. Okay?
I agree.
They're responsible too, not just he being a scapegoat. Also too, Perrysburg now has found out, they put this on without an alternate program. Now they want to blame somebody else because they didn't get themselves together and put an alternate on. I would hope that we don't do the same thing. I commend you guys for taking it slow, making sure it's done right, because the majority of us, we don't need that service, but we have people that do. Not just the disabled, those that have lost their license, those that can't afford a car or the insurance to drive, those that for whatever reasons who can't drive and have that entitlement and that pleasure that we all have. So we still have people that come in, go out, work here, work outside, wherever, and are entitled to a life. And I would hope that it's not the attitude, well, I don't use it, so let's lose it, okay? Because I don't use the senior center, I don't use the school system, I don't use the parks, so I guess I could say I want to be reimbursed because I don't use it. So I hope we don't go that route and that line of thinking. I think all of our services we have are wonderful, and that I'm proud that we can provide those. Yes, is there a cost? But maybe there are other ways to look at how to fund certain things. I mean, all entities talk about it, but then they leave it up to somebody else after they're out of office. Hopefully we can come up with something else. But please, take it slow, and you'll come up with a good plan. Okay? Thanks.
I would like to offer a motion.
Can I go into other real quick, John? I'm sorry. I want to just update everybody real quick on the Township Association, because Mr. Hayes brought up a point. First of all, I gave Darrell some information. Did you get the information about going to that zoning meeting down in Columbus about they're going to be changing a lot of the laws? No. Melissa didn't give you a copy of that? I gave it to her the other day? All right. Because they're doing a big study down there because the laws are changing with zoning. As we just got the new laws, they're going to, so you guys can understand this first, then the new law is going to enact that we have to now, if there's a jurisdiction over 5,000 people, we have to fill out ethics forms and pay the fee to the state. They're going to start collecting fees from all the jurisdictions on that. So when you have a population of over 5,000, you have to fill out everything you did, just like major politicians have to do. Last but not least, on Mr. Hayes' thing about the depleting funds, yes, that's why they're doing more cooperative things with, if you cooperate with other communities and other entities and other regions, police, fire, whatnot, and everything, and you share services and do things like that, we'll get more grant monies from the state. Other than that, we're not going to get a dime. Because that's the things we're dealing with at the Township Association that we discussed at the last meeting. And we have more things to discuss at our next meeting in May here, too. And the May meeting will be here at this location. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all. Go ahead.
I think I'd like to offer a motion to go into executive session at 7:52.
To review the fact finders.
Labor negotiations and the sale and purchase of property.
Second. Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney? Yes. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Did you tell me about the disc?
Oh, just to pause it?
Yeah, do what he does and then start it up again. We're going to shut this off.
You're right.
need,
Okay, we're on, the paper's going here.
we need, what's the face?
I would like.
Is Andy still here?
No, we're just going to record.
We're just gonna finish up.
We are recording, and then we'll just be able to put that on the minutes, and so we'll be all set.
I'd like to offer a motion to come out of executive session at 8:19.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Gentlemen, I have in front of me the Fact Finders report for the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association for our police, and in this report, which I can go over with the media afterwards, I would recommend that the township trustees accept the Fact Finders report, and we have 2 of the 3 police departments have already accepted it, and I think the third one is too, so I think this will put everything to bed.
Okay, I'll offer resolution 12-056 to accept the fact finders report with the police union.
I will second that with discussion.
Let's discuss.
The fact finder came back and recommended a 2% for year 1 and a 1.5%, so we would be putting the contract to bed for 2 years.
And that covers, the contract was only reopened for wages. That's the only thing we discussed, and it's put to bed for everything then for 2 years.
And John, the negotiating on the bonuses, those are been taken off the table?
But has been, the fact finder found that those were not worthy of including in his report, and so, and like I said, I taught basically the police were looking at a 1 year, 2% 750 bonus. That's what they took to the fact finder. We took 1.5 to the fact finder, and the fact finder found, which I am pleased with, at a 2%, 1.5, no signing bonus, 2 years.
Okay, I would like to offer...
Already did.
Oh, okay.
Call the
Just
roll.
need to call the roll here. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Okay.
Seeing no other business, that's it.
I would like to offer a motion for adjournment at 8:21.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Haddad?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
And go eat pizza now and drink a beer.
There you go.
That's on the tape, too.